I was getting ready for Sunday dinner at my son's house when my lawyer sent me a text message. 2 words that changed everything. Call me. Do not go there. What he discovered about my daughter-in-law and my son's plan changed my life forever. I had woken up early that Sunday, nervous as a teenager going to prom because Ryan, my only son, had invited me over for dinner. It had been weeks since we spent any real time together. Weeks where every call I made ended with a rushed, "I will call you later. Mom, I am busy." But that Sunday was different. He had insisted. "Mom, come over. Vanessa made your favorite lasagna." I had smiled when I hung up the phone. Maybe things were finally getting better between us. I was standing in front of the mirror putting on the silver earrings my late husband gave me 30 years ago when my cell phone vibrated on the dresser. It was a message from Mr. Duran, my attorney. Just 2 words in capital letters. Call me. My heart sank. Ernest Duran never wrote like that. He was a calm, methodical man, the kind who weighs every word before speaking. I had known him for 15 years, ever since he helped me with my husband's will. I dialed his number with shaking hands. "Stella, thank God you answered." His voice sounded agitated, something I had never heard from him before. "Where are you?" "I am at home, Ernest. I am getting ready to go see Ryan and—" "Do not go. Please listen to me carefully. Do not go to that house." The blue dress I was holding in my other hand slipped through my fingers. What are you talking about? It is dinner with my son. He invited me." "Stella, I found something. Something very serious. I need you to come to my office right now, or if you prefer, I can come to your house." My breathing became heavy. Outside, the afternoon sun was streaming through the window, but suddenly I felt cold. "Ernest, you are scaring me. What is happening?" There was a silence that lasted only seconds but felt like an eternity. "Your house, Stella. It is not yours anymore." My legs gave out. I had to sit on the edge of the bed. "What do you mean it is not mine?" "Of course it is mine. I bought it with my own money. I worked for 30 years to—" "You signed a full transfer of ownership 6 months ago. Your son is the legal owner now, and there is more, much more. But I cannot tell you over the phone. Stella, this is very serious." The world stopped. My house. The house I built with embroidery, with my tired hands, with the late nights in front of the sewing machine after my husband died. The house where I raised Ryan, where the photographs of my entire life hung on the walls. "I am coming over," I whispered. "Give me 20 minutes." I hung up. I sat there staring at the blue dress lying on the floor, and then I understood something that froze my blood. That dinner was not a reconciliation. It was a trap. If something in this story makes you feel a knot in your chest, stay until the end. Because what I discovered that afternoon did not just take away my house, it took away my faith in my own blood. Welcome to our story, family. Please subscribe and join me in this story, because I need someone else to know what I lived through. While I was driving to Attorney Duran's office, tears began to blur my vision. I had to stop at a red light and take a deep breath, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. People passed by me laughing, walking calmly, unaware that my world had just collapsed. How had I gotten here? My mind flew back to the darkest days of my life. 12 years ago, when my husband Frank died of a sudden heart attack, I was left alone with $2,000 in the bank and rent that was due in 2 months. Ryan had just started college. He was 20 years old and had his whole life ahead of him. I was 56, had no pension, and had an emptiness in my chest that seemed to swallow everything. But I did not give myself the luxury of falling apart. I locked myself in the living room of our old rental house and took out the vintage embroidery machine my mother had left me, that black Singer machine heavy as an anchor that I had carried with me since I was a girl. I cleaned it, oiled every piece, and embroidered my first tablecloth. I sold it at the craft fair for $50. $50 turned into $100, then $300, then $1,000 a week. I embroidered napkins, tablecloths, traditional blouses, cushion covers with floral patterns, angels and landscapes. Every stitch carried my pain, my rage, my need to survive. I worked from 6 in the morning until 11 at night. My fingers bled, my eyes burned under the yellow light of the bulb, but I did not stop. Ryan would see me working, and sometimes he would say, "Mom, rest, it is already very late." Or I would smile at him with the thread between my teeth and answer, "Honey, this is so you can have your degree, so you never lack for anything." 5 years later, I opened my own workshop, a small place in a trendy part of the city, with 3 employees helping me. My embroidery started selling in boutique stores. Foreign tourists paid up to $200 for a single tablecloth. My hands, those wrinkled and calloused hands, were building a future. And then came the most important day of my life. I was 63 years old when I signed the deed to this house, my house. A small 2-story property in a historic district with a little garden in the front and a terrace where I could watch the sunsets. It cost $350,000. I paid for it in cash. Every bill represented a sunrise in front of the machine, a fulfilled order, a yes from a satisfied client. The notary handed me the keys, and I cried like I had never cried before. I called Ryan that afternoon. He had already graduated as an industrial engineer. He was working at an international company. He was earning good money. I told him, "Son, we finally have our own house. We will never depend on anyone again." He came over that night carrying a bottle of sparkling cider. We toasted in the empty living room, sitting on the floor because I did not have furniture yet. He hugged me tight and said, "Mom, you are the strongest woman I know." I kept those words like a treasure. Besides the house, I managed to save $85,000. I had them in a fixed-term investment account. It was my cushion, my security, my dignified old age. I planned to leave everything to Ryan one day, but as an inheritance, not as charity, as the fruit of a life well lived, not as stolen loot. I parked in front of the building where Mr. Duran's office was. I turned off the engine. I looked at myself in the rearview mirror. My eyes were swollen, my mascara was running, my hair was messy. But there was something else in my reflection. There was fear. Fear of confirming that everything I had fought for, everything I had built with blood and sleepless nights, had been snatched away by the 2 people I trusted most in this world. I took a deep breath. I grabbed my purse and got out of the car. Because if I had learned one thing in this life, it was this: the hardest battles are not fought against strangers. They are fought against those you believed would never betray you. Attorney Duran received me in his office with an expression I had never seen on him, worry mixed with contained rage. He poured me a glass of water and waited for me to sit down before opening a beige folder full of documents. But before we get to that, I need to tell you how it all started. How a woman I did not know entered our lives, and without me noticing, began to destroy everything from the inside. 3 years ago, Ryan arrived at my house one Saturday afternoon with a smile I had not seen in a long time. He was holding the hand of a thin woman with straight, dark hair, impeccably dressed in a pearl-colored tailored suit, very high heels, a designer bag, and expensive perfume that flooded my living room as soon as she entered. "Mom, this is Vanessa," my son said, with that excited voice of someone introducing something important. "She has a degree in administration. She works at a financial consulting firm." Vanessa extended her hand. She did not hug me. She did not smile warmly, just a polite, measured, cold smile. "Mrs. Stella, what a pleasure to meet you. Ryan has spoken a lot about you." I liked her at first. Or maybe I forced myself to like her because I saw my son was happy. I had not seen him like that in years. Since his last girlfriend left him, Ryan had become more serious, more closed off in his work. Vanessa seemed successful, intelligent, one of those women who know what they want. I thought, good my son found someone like that, someone who pushes him to grow. I did not know that what she wanted was exactly what I had built. The first few months were normal. They came to visit me on Sundays. Vanessa always brought desserts from some very expensive French bakery, the kind that cost $10 a slice. I offered her my homemade sweet bread, my freshly baked pastries, but she barely tasted a tiny piece and left it on the plate. "I am watching my figure, Mrs. Stella," she would say with that smile that never reached her eyes. "But it looks delicious." And then the comments started. Subtle, wrapped in kind words, but comments nonetheless. One day, while we were drinking coffee in my living room, Vanessa looked around and said, "Mrs. Stella, this house has so much potential. With a remodel, it could be worth double. Those vintage furniture pieces are cute, but if you change them for something more modern, minimalist, imagine the change." I smiled uncomfortably. "I like them like this. Every piece of furniture has its history." Sure, she replied, touching her perfectly ironed hair. "It is just that, well, sometimes holding on to the past prevents us from growing, do you not think?" Ryan said nothing. He just drank his coffee in silence. Another Sunday, while I was preparing pot roast in the kitchen, Vanessa came in and leaned on the counter. "Mrs. Stella, do you already have a structured retirement plan? Because at your age, you should be thinking about safer investments, about diversifying your assets." "I have my savings," I replied, stirring the pot, "and my business still makes enough to live well." "Ah, yes, the embroidery workshop," she said with a tone I did not like. "It is very artisanal. But tell me, have you thought about what will happen when you can no longer work, when your hands do not respond like before?" I felt a knot in my throat, because it was a question I had asked myself on sleepless nights. But hearing it from her mouth, said like that, so cold, so calculating, it hurt. "That is why I save," I said firmly, "and that is why I have this house. It is my security." Vanessa nodded slowly, as if she were taking a mental note of something. "Of course. But do you know what would be smarter? Putting this house in Ryan's name right now. That way, when the time comes, there will be no legal problems nor taxes to pay. Everything would stay in the family protected." Something inside me bristled, but I said nothing. Ryan still did not intervene. The following month, they announced they were getting married. I organized a small gathering at my house to celebrate. I invited my friends from the workshop, some neighbors, the family. Vanessa arrived late with a look of annoyance and barely tasted the food I had prepared with so much love. "I am not used to food that is so spicy," she told me in a low voice while Ryan talked to a cousin. I swallowed hard and smiled. The wedding was in an elegant hall that they paid for. I had no voice or vote in anything. Not on the menu, not on the music, not on the guest list. It was their day, Vanessa reminded me, and I as a mother had to respect their decisions. I sat at that wedding feeling like just another guest, not the mother of the groom, and after the honeymoon in Europe, something definitely changed. The visits became increasingly rare. Ryan was always busy. Vanessa always had a meeting, a commitment, or was too tired. When I called, he answered with single words. When I proposed seeing each other, he postponed. And when they finally came over, Vanessa dominated the entire conversation. She talked about her achievements, her projects, her investments. She looked at my house like someone evaluating a property to buy and demolish. One night, alone in my room, I asked myself if I was exaggerating, if it was just me. If the problem was that I could not accept that my son already had his own life. But something in my heart told me no, that there was something darker growing behind those cold smiles and those comments disguised as advice. And I was right. But when I finally discovered it, it was already too late. Attorney Duran placed the first document in front of me. It was a public deed. I recognized my signature at the bottom of the page. My hands started to tremble. "Before explaining this," Ernest said with a grave voice, "I need you to tell me exactly how you came to sign this paper." I closed my eyes, and I went back to that day, 6 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon. Ryan had called me that morning, something unusual because he almost never did during the week. "Mom, can you come to the apartment for lunch? Vanessa and I need to talk to you about something important." His tone was serious. My heart accelerated. I thought of illnesses, problems, bad news. During the whole drive to their apartment uptown, I prayed in silence. When I arrived, Vanessa received me with a smile that seemed too wide, too rehearsed. She had set a table with salmon salad and white wine. Everything very elegant, very impersonal. Nothing I really enjoyed, but I ate in silence, waiting for them to tell me what was happening. After dessert, Ryan and Vanessa exchanged a look. He cleared his throat. "Mom, we have been thinking a lot about your future." Ryan began, "About your security." "My security?" I repeated, confused. Vanessa leaned forward with that expression of concern that I now know was completely fake. "Mrs. Stella Ryan and I have been investigating. Did you know that when a person passes away and leaves real estate, the heirs have to pay enormous taxes? We are talking about up to 35% of the value of the property." I froze. 35%, I whispered. "That is right." She continued, taking out a folder with printed papers, graphs, numbers highlighted in yellow. "Your house is valued at over $600,000. That means Ryan would have to pay more than $200,000 just in probate costs and inheritance taxes. And if he does not pay on time, the government can seize the property." My son took my hand. That hand I had held when he learned to walk, when he had his first fall, when his heart was broken for the first time. "Mom, we do not want you to lose your house. We do not want all your effort to go to the government. That is why we investigated legal options." "What options?" I asked with a broken voice. Vanessa slid more papers toward me. There were words I did not understand. "Transfer of rights, early patrimonial transmission, fiscal protection. The solution is simple and completely legal," she explained with a soft voice almost maternal. "You do a transfer of the property to Ryan's name now while you are alive. That way there are no taxes to pay. The house stays protected, and you of course keep living there as always. Nothing changes for you. It is just a paper and notary procedure to protect your assets." "But would I stop being the owner?" I asked, feeling my mouth go dry. "On paper, yes," Ryan responded quickly. "But in practice, no. It would still be your house, Mom. It is your home. No one is going to take you out of there. This is just to protect you from the abusive taxes of the government," Vanessa added with an urgent tone. "And believe me, Mrs. Stella, we have seen terrible cases. Older people who lose their houses because their children cannot pay the taxes. Families destroyed. Assets lost. We do not want that to happen to you." They showed me printed articles from the internet. Stories of families who had lost everything. Red numbers, warnings, alarming headlines. I was dizzy, confused, scared. "But is there no other way A will maybe—" "Wills do not avoid taxes, Mom," Ryan interrupted. "On the contrary, they complicate them more. This is the safest way. Besides, I already spoke with a notary. Everything is ready. We just need your signature." "You already spoke with a notary," I repeated, feeling an alarm in my chest. "To speed up the process," Vanessa explained, "these procedures can take months. But if you sign this week, we stay protected. Your house stays protected." Ryan squeezed my hand. "Mom, trust me. This is the best for you, for everyone." And that was my mistake, my monumental mistake. I trusted. I trusted because he was my son, because I thought no one in the world would protect me better than him, because I assumed his love for me was unbreakable. 2 days later, I signed before the notary. The man read the documents quickly. He pointed out where to put my signature, and I obeyed like a robot. Vanessa and Ryan were there, smiling calm. The notary gave me a copy of the papers and told me, "Congratulations, you performed an act of great love and foresight." I left there feeling a strange emptiness in my stomach, but I convinced myself I had done the right thing. I put the papers in a drawer and tried not to think about it anymore, until that Sunday, until that message from Attorney Duran. I opened my eyes and looked at him. He had a tense jaw, his fists closed on the desk. "Stella," he said with a hoarse voice, "what you signed was not a protection. It was a total, absolute, and irrevocable transfer of the property. Your house does not belong to you anymore. Ryan is the only legal owner, and if he wanted to sell it to you, kick you out, mortgage it, he can do it without your consent." The words fell on me like stones. "But he told me, he promised me." "They lied to you," Ernest sentenced, "and there is more." He took out another document, a bank statement. 3 months ago, Ryan requested a mortgage loan using your house as collateral. $200,000. They already have it in their account. The world stopped spinning. "What?" "They are putting your property in debt, Stella, and if they do not pay, the bank keeps it. But it is not just that." Ernest took out his phone. He showed me screenshots of a WhatsApp conversation. A contact at the notary passed this to me. These are messages between Vanessa and a friend of hers. I read, and with every word I felt my soul breaking. We almost got rid of the burden. The old lady signed everything. Now we just need to get her out of the house and remodel. Ryan says we should send her to a state nursing home. After all, she already served her function. And if she resists, she is not going to resist. She is alone. She has no one else. And even if she wanted to fight, she has no papers to back her up. The house is ours. I dropped the phone on the desk. Tears burst out without control, burning my cheeks, drowning my voice. My son. My only son. The boy I carried in my womb. The one I fed when I did not even have enough for myself. The one I dressed with clothes I sewed in the early mornings. The one I educated, protected, loved, with every fiber of my being. He had sold me for $200,000. I do not know how long I was crying in that office. Mr. Duran brought me a chamomile tea that I could not drink. My hands were trembling so much that the liquid spilled onto my legs. He waited in silence, giving me the space I needed to process the unthinkable. When I could finally speak, my voice came out broken, unrecognizable. "How did you discover all this?" Ernest leaned back in his chair and sighed deeply. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from a colleague at the Public Registry of Property. He asked me if I was still your lawyer. I told him yes. Then he mentioned that he had seen strange movements in your deed. A total transfer followed almost immediately by a mortgage credit request. That seemed suspicious to him. "Why suspicious?" I asked, wiping my tears. "Because normally when someone does a transfer for family protection, they do not mortgage the property immediately. That contradicts the supposed purpose of protecting the asset. My colleague smelled something weird and notified me." Ernest opened another folder. I started to investigate. I asked for copies of all the documents. I reviewed the credit contract. And then I discovered that the loan was not requested to improve the property nor for any medical emergency. It was a discretionary credit. That means that money can be used for whatever they want. For whatever they want, I repeated, feeling nauseous. That is right. It can be to buy a car, go on vacation, invest in another business, whatever. And you, Stella, although you are no longer the legal owner, you remain as a moral guarantee. If they do not pay, the bank executes the mortgage and auctions the house. You lose your home, and they keep the money. I felt the room spinning. How could I be so stupid? I moaned, covering my face with my hands. How did I not realize? "You were not stupid," Ernest said firmly. "You were manipulated. They used your love, your trust, and your fear against you. That is not stupidity, Stella. That is abuse." The word hung in the air. Abuse. My own son was abusing me. "But there is more," the lawyer continued, and I thought there could be nothing worse. "I hired a private investigator just to be sure, and he found this." He showed me more screenshots this time of a conversation between Ryan and a real estate agent. "How much can we list the house for?" "In that sector with those characteristics, we can ask for $800,000. It will sell fast." "Perfect. But I need to get the current tenant out first. Do you know lawyers who handle express evictions? Sure, I will pass you contacts. With the right money, in 3 months you have it empty. My son was calling me a tenant, as if I were a stranger, as if I had not given 30 years of my life to build that home. Stella listened to me well, Ernest said, leaning forward. They plan to take you out of your own house, sell it, keep the money from the credit plus the money from the sale. We are talking about almost $1 million in total, and they would leave you on the street. It cannot be legal, I whispered. There has to be some law that protects me. Legally, you signed a voluntary transfer. Before a judge that is valid. They can argue that it was your free decision, and without proof that there was deception or coercion, it is very difficult to reverse it. Very difficult or impossible. Ernest held my gaze. Difficult, but not impossible. If we manage to prove that there was malice, fraud, or exploitation of your vulnerability as a senior citizen, we can fight. But we need solid evidence. And above all, we need them to make a mistake. What kind of mistake? That they say or do something that demonstrates their true intention, that they get confident, that they reveal their plan openly. I remained silent, processing everything. Outside, the sky was beginning to darken. The Sunday that had started with so much hope had turned into the worst nightmare of my life. And the dinner? I asked suddenly. Why did they invite me today specifically? Ernest took out a final document. Because tomorrow, Monday, is the deadline for you to sign your waiver of any right to use or live on the property. It is the last paper they need to have absolute control. If you do not sign, they can start a long legal process. But if you sign, it is over. They can legally kick you out at any moment. Now everything made sense. The sudden invitation after weeks of silence, the favorite lasagna, the smiles. Everything was part of a plan to soften me up so I would arrive confident, happy off guard. And after dessert, they would take out some little papers for me to sign without reading, believing they were photos or family memories. But you warned me in time, I said, looking at Ernest with infinite gratitude. You saved me from signing that. For now, he replied. But Stella, they are not going to give up. When you do not show up today, when you do not sign tomorrow, they are going to pressure you, they are going to look for you, they are going to try to convince you in every possible way. What do I do then? I asked, feeling small, vulnerable, broken. Ernest clasped his hands on the desk. You have 2 options. The first, accept what happened, negotiate with them some agreement where they allow you to live in the house until you die, and pray they keep their word. The second, he paused, the second is to fight. Gather evidence, record them if necessary, prove they deceived you and get back what is yours. Do I have a real chance of winning? If you do exactly what I tell you, if you are brave and strategic, yes. There are federal laws protecting seniors against financial abuse. If we demonstrate there was manipulation, we can annul the transfer. But it will not be easy, and you will have to face your own son in a court of law. The tears welled up again, but this time they were different. They were not just from pain. There was something else, something starting to grow in my chest like a burning ember. Rage. I lifted my head and looked Ernest in the eyes. I want to fight. I want to get my house back, and I want them to pay for what they did to me. He nodded slowly with a slight smile. Then get ready, Stella, because what is coming will not be pretty. But I promise you, you will not be alone. I left that office when it was already night. My phone was full of missed calls from Ryan and messages from Vanessa. Mom, where are you? It is late. Did something happen to you? Answer, please. We are worried. Dinner is getting cold. I did not answer any of them. I drove back to my house that was no longer mine, and I sat in the dark living room, looking at the photographs on the walls. Ryan as a baby, Ryan at his graduation, Ryan hugging me the day I bought this house. At what moment had that boy turned into a stranger capable of betraying me like this? And more importantly, at what moment had I forgotten that I am a woman who does not give up? That night something changed inside me. The pain was still there, but now it was accompanied by something stronger: determination. I spent the whole night awake, sitting in my bed with my back against the headboard, staring at the ceiling while the hours dragged on with unbearable slowness. My phone did not stop ringing. Calls, messages, every vibration was like a dagger in the stomach. At 2 a.m, Ryan left a voicemail. His tone had changed. He no longer sounded worried. He sounded annoyed. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You are not answering the phone. You stood us up. You made us look bad. At least have the decency to explain to us what happened. Call me early tomorrow." I deleted the message without finishing it. Monday morning, Attorney Duran called me. "Stella, how are you holding up?" "I did not sleep," I replied with a raspy voice. "I imagined. Listen, I have a plan, but I need you to trust me and do exactly what I am going to ask you. Tell me. I want you to go to that dinner." I sat up in bed suddenly. "What are you, crazy? I do not plan to—" "Listen to me," he interrupted calmly. "We need evidence. We need them to reveal their intentions. And the best way to get it is for you to go pretend you know nothing and let them talk. Take your cell phone recording in your purse. Record everything. Every word, every gesture, every comment." "Ernest, I cannot sit in front of them and act as if—" "I know it is difficult, but it is the only way. If we do not have solid proof of their plan, it will be your word against theirs. And before a judge, they can argue that everything was legal and transparent. We need them to hang themselves." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. "And if I cannot? And if I fall apart right there?" "You are not going to fall apart," Ernest said firmly, "because you are stronger than you think, and because you have survived worse things than an awkward dinner. Think of this as a performance, the most important acting role of your life." That afternoon, I called Ryan back. I put on my best repentant mother voice. "Son, forgive me. Sunday I felt sick. I think it was something I ate. I had to go back home in an emergency and I fell asleep. I am just seeing all your calls." There was a silence on the other end. Then his voice colder than normal. "You were sick this whole time and could not send a message." "I am sorry, my love. I did not want to worry you. Can we have dinner today? Let me make it up to you." I heard Vanessa talking in the background. Then Ryan responded. "Today we cannot, but tomorrow, yes. Does 8 o'clock work for you?" "Perfect, I will be there." I hung up and stared at the phone in my hand. Mr. Duran had given me precise instructions. Activate the voice recorder, put it in my purse, leave it nearby during the entire dinner. Tuesday arrived too fast. I dressed in a burgundy sweater and black pants. Nothing elegant. I did not want them to think it was a special occasion for me. I took my brown leather bag, verified 3 times that the recorder was active, and drove uptown with my stomach in knots. When I arrived at the building where they lived, the doorman greeted me with a smile. I nodded without saying a word. I went up in the elevator to the 12th floor. Every second felt eternal. I rang the doorbell. Vanessa opened the door. She was wearing a tight black dress, and her hair was tied in a perfect bun. She looked me up and down before smiling. "Mrs. Stella, good thing you are feeling better. Come in." I entered. The apartment smelled of expensive perfume and lavender-scented candles. Everything was impeccably tidy. Not a speck of dust, not an object out of place. It was a cold space, without a soul, like a magazine showroom. Ryan came out of the kitchen drying his hands with a cloth. He gave me a kiss on the cheek, but it was mechanical, without warmth. "Hi, Mom. Sit down. Dinner is almost ready." I sat at the glass dining table. I placed my purse on the empty chair next to me, making sure the microphone remained exposed. Vanessa poured wine. I barely touched it. Ryan brought the plates. Mushroom risotto. Nothing to do with the lasagna they had supposedly prepared on Sunday. We ate in silence for the first few minutes. I felt their eyes on me, evaluating me, measuring every one of my movements. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence. "Mrs. Stella, we wanted to talk to you about something important." Here it came. "Yes," I asked, feigning innocence. Ryan left his fork on the plate. "Mom, Vanessa and I have been thinking. Now that the house is in my name, it would be good if we made some adjustments." "Adjustments?" I repeated. Vanessa smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "What Ryan means is that the house has a lot of wasted potential. With a good remodel, it could become an excellent investment. We could even rent it out and generate passive income." I felt my stomach shrink, but I kept my face neutral. "Rent my house?" "Well, technically, it is not your house anymore, Mrs. Stella," Vanessa said with a soft voice almost maternal. "It belongs to Ryan, and he has the right to make decisions about his property. Do you not think?" My son said nothing. He just looked at his plate. "Besides," Vanessa continued, "you live alone in a 2-story house. That is not practical at your age. The stairs are dangerous. Maintenance is expensive. Would it not be better if you moved to a place more suitable?" "Suitable?" I asked, feeling how the rage started to climb up my throat. "A smaller place, more manageable," she explained as if she were talking to a child. "There are very nice residences for seniors with nurses, activities people your age. You would be more comfortable." "Are you saying I should leave my house?" The words came out harder than I intended. Ryan finally looked up. "Mom, do not look at it like that. It is for your own good. You are not at an age to live alone anymore. What happens if you fall, if you get sick? You need to be in a place where they take care of you." "I take care of myself," I replied, clenching my fists under the table. "I have lived alone for 12 years, and I have never needed anyone to—" "But things change, Mrs. Stella," Vanessa interrupted. "You are already 68 years old. We have to be realistic. And frankly, maintaining that house is an unnecessary expense when Ryan and I could be investing that money in our future, in our family's future." That last phrase hung in the air like poison. "Your family?" I repeated slowly. "And what am I?" Vanessa blinked, realizing her mistake. But she covered it quickly. "Of course you are family, Mrs. Stella, but you have to understand that Ryan and I are building our own life, and that house represents capital that we need." "Capital?" I repeated, feeling the tears starting to sting my eyes. "My house is capital to you." Ryan sighed with impatience. "Mom, do not get dramatic. We are trying to resolve this in the best way. Look, we already investigated. There is a state nursing home that accepts enrollment at no cost. It is from the government, but it is decent. 3 meals a day. In-house doctor." "A government nursing home." The words came out like a choked moan. At that moment, Vanessa's cell phone rang. She took it and got up from the table. "Excuse me, it is important. I have to answer." She went out to the balcony, closing the glass door behind her. But not completely. It stayed slightly open. Ryan and I were left alone. He did not look at me. He played with his fork, moving the rice from one side of the plate to the other. "Just like that?" I asked him with a trembling voice. "Just like that, you get rid of me?" "It is not that, Mom. It is just that—" "What, Ryan, what is it?" He raised his voice for the first time. "That I need that money. Okay, Vanessa and I have plans. We want to buy land in the Hamptons, build our own house. But we cannot do it if all your wealth is stuck in that old house that you do not even use completely." I ran out of air. "That old house is what I built for you," I whispered. "Every brick, every window, every square foot was thinking of leaving you something so you had a backup. And I thank you, Mom, but I am not a child anymore. I am 32 years old and I need to make my own decisions." From the balcony, I heard Vanessa's voice talking on the phone. She was speaking loud enough for her words to reach the living room. "Yes, we almost got rid of the problem. We are going to send her to a government asylum, imagine that. But at least we recover the investment. No, it has not been difficult. The old lady is docile, she believes everything we tell her. 3 months maximum, and the house is ours to sell. The world stopped. I looked at my son. He had heard every word, and he did nothing. He did not get up to defend me. He did not yell at his wife. He did not say, "Do not talk about my mother like that." He simply kept moving the rice on his plate. And in that moment, something inside me died. It was not my love for him. That, however painful, was still there. What died was my illusion, the image I had of my son, the idea that I mattered to him even a little bit. I got up from the chair slowly. I took my purse. Ryan finally looked at me. "Where are you going?" I did not answer. I walked toward the door. Vanessa returned from the balcony with a smile. "She is leaving already, Mrs. Stella. But we have not finished." "We are finished," I said with a voice I did not recognize as mine. "We are finished with everything." I opened the door and walked out. Behind me, I heard Ryan say, "Let her go. She will sign. She has nowhere else to go." I went down in the elevator with my legs shaking. I reached my car. I sat in the driver's seat. And there, finally, I exploded. I cried like I had not cried since my husband's death. I cried for the betrayal, for the humiliation, for the son I had lost without even noticing. But when the tears dried, when the crying turned into hiccups and the hiccups into silence, I took out my phone. I stopped the recording. 2 hours and 14 minutes of audio. Every word, every plan, every insult disguised as concern. I sent the file to Attorney Duran with a single message. "I have what we needed. Now tell me how we destroy them." I arrived at my house past 11 at night. The streetlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows over the garden I had planted myself years ago. Roses, jasmine, bougainvillea. Every plant had its history, its moment, its reason for being. I entered and locked the door. I stood in the entrance looking at my living room. The furniture Vanessa called vintage with contempt. The photographs on the walls documenting a whole life. The hand-woven rug a grateful client had given me. The ceramic lamp I bought on a trip when Frank was still alive. This was my house, my refuge. My testimony that a single widowed woman could pick herself up from the floor and build something dignified. And they wanted to rip it away from me as if it were a disposable object. I sat on the sofa in the darkness with my purse still hanging from my shoulder. The silence of the house was so deep I could hear my own ragged breathing. For years I had defined myself through my son. I was Ryan's mom. My reason for existing was his well-being, his success, his happiness. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every meal I did not taste, so he would not lack anything. Everything made sense because it was for him. But who was I without that role? Who was Stella when she was no longer just a mother? The answer came like a whisper from the deepest part of my being. I was a survivor. A woman who had buried her husband and did not let herself be buried with him. A woman who turned pain into embroidery stitches and stitches into a business. A woman who learned to negotiate with suppliers to calculate costs, to defend her prices when clients wanted to pay less than what was fair. I was a warrior. I always had been. I had just forgotten to put on my armor. My phone vibrated. It was Attorney Duran. "Stella, I listened to the full audio. It is pure gold. This is enough to prove fraud, manipulation, and financial abuse. Are you ready for war?" My fingers trembled over the keyboard. But I wrote with a clarity that surprised even me. "I am ready. Tell me what to do." His answer arrived in seconds. "Tomorrow, first thing, come to my office. We are going to prepare a lawsuit that will make their perfect world tremble. And Stella, I am going to ask you for difficult things. You are going to have to feign weakness when you are strong. You are going to have to act like a victim when you are the hunter. Can you do it?" I smiled in the darkness. A bitter smile, but a smile nonetheless. I can do whatever is necessary. That night, something strange happened to me. After so much crying, so much pain, so much humiliation, I slept deeply. I slept like I had not done in months, and I dreamed. I dreamed of my mother. She had died when I was barely 23 years old, but in the dream she was there sitting in front of her sewing machine with that serious and determined expression I remembered so well. "Honey," she told me without looking up from the embroidery, "do you remember what I taught you?" "What, Mom?" "That women like us do not break. We bend, yes. The wind shakes us, life hits us, but we do not break, because we are made of the same material as cacti, thorny on the outside, resilient on the inside, and capable of blooming even in the desert." I woke up with wet cheeks, but this time not from sadness. It was something different, something that felt like a goodbye and a welcome at the same time. I got up, took a long shower, and dressed carefully. Black pants, white blouse, my gray wool sweater. I pulled my hair back into a low bun. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, I did not see a victim. I saw a woman ready to fight. At 9 in the morning, I was at Attorney Duran's office. He already had everything prepared. Folders, documents, computer turned on with the audio, transcribed word for word. "Good morning, Stella." He greeted me, studying my face. "You look different." "I feel different," I replied, sitting in front of his desk. "Tell me what I have to do." Ernest clasped his hands and leaned forward. "The first thing is to understand what we are up against. They have the law on their side on paper. You signed voluntarily. But we have something more powerful, the truth and the proof that that signature was obtained through deception. What laws protect us? The Elder Justice Act, specifically the sections penalizing financial exploitation. We can also invoke procedural fraud and breach of trust, but this will not be quick, Stella. It can take months. "I do not care about the time," I said firmly. "I care about winning." "Good. Then this is what we are going to do." Ernest unfolded a detailed plan. First, we would file a lawsuit to annul the transfer of property based on fraud and substantial error. We would attach the audio as main evidence, plus a psychological evaluation, proving I had been emotionally manipulated. Second, we would request a precautionary measure to freeze any transaction on the property while the trial lasted. That would prevent Ryan from selling the house before the case was resolved. Third, we would file a criminal complaint for fraud and financial abuse against the elderly, which is a federal crime with penalties of up to 8 years in prison. Prison, I repeated, feeling a chill. If the crime is proven, yes. But Stella, I have to ask you directly. Are you willing to let your son face criminal consequences? The question hung in the air like a guillotine. I closed my eyes. I saw the 5-year-old boy who cried when he fell down, to the teenager who used to hug me when I cried for his father, to the young man who once told me, "You are the strongest woman I know." But I also saw the man who called me a tenant, who allowed his wife to call me a burden and an old hag, who planned to lock me away in a state nursing home just to keep my assets. I opened my eyes. I am willing to do whatever is necessary to get my dignity back. Ernest nodded slowly. Then there is something else you must know. For this plan to work, we need them to feel confident. We need them to believe they won. I want you to call them, act defeated, and tell them you are willing to negotiate. Negotiate. Pretend you accept leaving the house in exchange for a small monthly allowance. Tell them you just want to keep the peace, that you do not want any trouble. The safer they feel, the more mistakes they will make, and we will be documenting everything. You want me to humiliate myself even more. I want you to play chess, Stella. Sometimes to checkmate, you have to sacrifice pieces first. Do you trust me? I stared at him. This man had warned me in time. He had believed me when everyone else would have thought I was just a paranoid old woman. He was offering me his years of experience and his network of contacts, asking for nothing in return but justice. I trust you. Perfect. Then call him now, on speakerphone. I want to listen. I took out my phone with trembling hands. I dialed Ryan's number. It rang 3 times before he answered. Mom. His voice sounded surprised. Son, I said, putting into my voice all the exhaustion I truly felt. I need to talk to you about last night. Oh yeah, look, I think you were being very dramatic. You are right, I interrupted him. You are right, Ryan. I got dramatic. I am old, tired, and maybe you guys are right. Maybe I do need a smaller place, something more manageable. There was silence on the other end. Then, seriously, but I want to ask you for something. Do not send me to a state facility, please. Let me look for a small apartment I can rent and give me some monthly help for expenses. Not much, just enough to live with dignity. I heard Vanessa talking in the background, though I could not understand what she was saying. Then Ryan responded, How much would you need? About $2,000 a month for rent, food, basic expenses. That is fine, he said too quickly, too relieved. We can do that, but I need you to sign the papers I was going to give you yesterday, the ones renouncing your life estate rights. When can we see each other? Give me a few days to process all this, to say goodbye to the house. Friday. Friday is perfect. I will send you the address of the notary. And Mom, thanks for being reasonable. I hung up before he could see me vomit from disgust. Attorney Duran had a satisfied smile. Perfect. You just gave them the rope with which they are going to hang themselves. On Friday, when they arrive at the notary, we will be waiting for them with a court order and 2 police officers. 2 police officers. Just in case they try anything. Financial abuse against the elderly is a serious felony, and with that audio, we have probable cause for detention. I leaned back in the chair, exhausted but strangely at peace. Ernest, do you really think we can win? He held my gaze with an intensity I had not seen before. Stella, not only are we going to win, we are going to make them regret every single day they underestimated a woman who embroidered her own freedom with her own hands. And so began my transformation from victim to hunter. Because the biggest mistake predators make is believing the prey has no claws. The days between that Wednesday and Friday were the longest of my life. Each minute stretched like gum, heavy and dense. But Attorney Duran had given me very clear instructions. Act normal, do not raise suspicions, and above all, keep recording every interaction with Ryan and Vanessa. On Thursday afternoon, Vanessa called me. Her voice sounded sweet, almost maternal, the kind of sweetness snakes use before biting. Mrs. Stella, how are you? Ryan told me about your conversation. I want you to know you made a very wise decision. I pressed the phone against my ear with the recorder activated. Thank you, Vanessa. I suppose you were right. I am too old to maintain such a big house. Exactly. And look, I want you to know we are not bad people. The $2,000 a month is guaranteed. It is fair, right? You give us the house, we take care of you. You give us the house. As if it were a fair trade. As if 30 years of my life were worth $2,000 a month. Yes, it is fair. I lied, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Perfect. Then tomorrow at 11 at the notary's office. Everything is ready. You just have to sign, and that is it. Everyone happy. Oh, and Mrs. Stella. Yes. It is not necessary for you to bring a lawyer or anything like that. It is a simple procedure. Between family, right? Trust is the most important thing. I smiled bitterly. Of course, Vanessa. Between family. When I hung up, I sent the audio to Attorney Duran with a message. They are already celebrating. His response was immediate. Let them. Let them get drunk on confidence. Tomorrow will be their worst awakening. That night, I did not sleep. Not from anguish, but from anticipation. It was like Christmas Eve when I was a little girl, but instead of waiting for gifts, I was waiting for justice. I got up at 5 in the morning. I showered calmly, letting the hot water relax my tense muscles. I dressed in my best outfit, a beige suit I had bought for Ryan's graduation but never wore. I applied light makeup. I put on the pearl earrings that my late husband Fernando gave me for our 20th anniversary. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman I did not fully recognize. It was still me, but there was something different in my eyes, something hard, something that shone with determination. At 9 in the morning, I arrived at Attorney Duran's office, but this time we were not alone. There were 3 other people waiting. Stella, let me introduce you to Attorney James Montoya, a specialist in asset law. He will handle the civil part of the case. This is Attorney Patricia Ruiz from the Special Prosecutor's Office for Crimes Against the Elderly, and this is the District Attorney Agent, Richard Salazar. I stood there open-mouthed. All this Attorney Ruiz, a woman of about 45 with a sharp gaze, extended her hand. Mrs. Stella, your case landed on my desk 2 days ago. I listened to the audio recordings. I read the documents. And I am going to be honest with you. In my 15 years doing this, I have rarely seen such a clear case of premeditated financial abuse. Your son and your daughter-in-law not only committed fraud, they committed a federal crime. What is going to happen? I asked with a trembling voice. Agent Salazar, a burly man with a thick mustache, explained. At 11, you will enter the notary as agreed. We will be outside waiting. When they arrive and everyone is gathered, I will enter with the warrant for questioning. We are going to take them to the district attorney's office to take their statement. There they will be formally notified of the civil lawsuit and the criminal complaint. And the house? I asked, feeling my heart beating in my throat. Attorney Montoya smiled. We already have the precautionary measure ready. As soon as the lawsuit is filed, the property is frozen. They cannot sell it, mortgage it further, or make any transaction. And if we prove the fraud, which we are going to prove, the transfer is annulled and the property returns to your name. How long will it take? Between 3 and 6 months, Attorney Duran responded. But Stella, I need you to understand something. From today on, your relationship with your son changes forever. There is no turning back from this. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. My relationship with him changed the day he decided to sell me for a bank loan. I am only taking back what is mine. At 10:30, we left for the notary. I drove my car, followed by a discreet vehicle carrying the attorneys and the agent. My cell phone rang. It was Ryan. We are almost there. We will be punctual. Me too. See you there. I parked in front of the notary's office, an old building in the downtown district. My legs were shaking as I got out of the car. Attorney Duran approached and put a hand on my shoulder. Breathe. You can do this. Go in, say hello. Act normal. When I come in, just step away and let us do our job. I nodded and went in. The notary, a bald man with thick glasses, received me with a professional smile. Mrs. Stella, welcome. Your son already notified us they are on their way. Would you like a coffee while we wait? No, thank you. I am fine. I sat in one of the chairs in the waiting room. My hands were sweating. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone in the room could hear it. 5 minutes later, the door opened. Ryan entered first, dressed in a gray suit and blue tie. He looked confident, relaxed, almost happy. Behind him came Vanessa, impeccable as always in a black dress and heels that echoed on the marble floor. Hi, Mom, Ryan said, giving me a kiss on the cheek that felt like ice. Ready to get this over with? Ready, I replied with a neutral voice. Vanessa smiled at me. Mrs. Stella, you look great. That suit fits you beautifully. Hypocrite, I thought, but I smiled. Thank you, dear. They showed us into the notary's office. He already had the documents spread out on his mahogany desk. Papers and more papers with seals, signatures, paragraphs in small print. Good, said the notary, adjusting his glasses. Here we have the formal waiver from Mrs. Stella renouncing any right of life estate habitation or use, regarding the property located on... He did not finish the sentence. The door burst open and Attorney Duran, Attorney Ruiz, Attorney Montoya, and Agent Salazar entered. The notary stood up confused. "What is the meaning of this?" Agent Salazar showed his badge. "District Attorney's Office. I have a warrant for questioning for Mr. Ryan Navarro and Mrs. Vanessa Ortega Navarro." Ryan turned pale. Vanessa stood up from her chair, furious. "What is this? Some kind of joke?" Attorney Ruiz took a step forward. "It is no joke, ma'am. You are being summoned by the Special Prosecutor's Office for crimes against the elderly. You are accused of fraud, financial abuse, and breach of trust." Ryan looked at me with wide eyes. "Mom, what did you do?" I stood up slowly. I looked him directly in the eyes without blinking. "What I should have done 6 months ago. Defend myself." "This is ridiculous," Vanessa shouted. "She signed voluntarily. We have the papers." Attorney Duran took out a folder. "Papers obtained through deceit, veiled threats, and emotional manipulation. We have recordings of your own voices confessing the plan, calling her a burden, planning to lock her in a state nursing home. Do you want to hear them here? Or do you prefer to do it at the district attorney's office?" The silence that followed was deafening. Vanessa tried to speak, but Attorney Montoya interrupted her. "Furthermore, we requested and obtained a freezing order. The property is frozen from this moment. You cannot sell it, rent it, or make any transaction until the nullity trial is resolved. You cannot do this." Ryan shouted, his voice cracking. "I am the legal owner." "You are the owner of a property obtained illegally," Attorney Ruiz replied coldly, "and that is called dispossession. Now are you coming voluntarily, or do I need to call for backup units?" Ryan looked at me with a mixture of shock, rage, and something that almost looked like fear. "Mom, you cannot do this to me. I am your son." I felt the tears beginning to form, but I held them back. "Not here, not now." "Precisely because you are my son, Ryan, is why this hurts so much. And yet you betrayed me." Vanessa tried to approach me, but Agent Salazar stepped in between. "Ma'am, please come with us. You can call your lawyer from the station." I watched them leave escorted. Ryan walked like a zombie with his head down. Vanessa shouted empty threats about lawsuits and expensive lawyers. When the door closed behind them, my legs gave way. Attorney Duran held me before I fell. "It is over," he whispered. "The hardest part is over." But that was not true. The hardest part was just beginning. Because it is one thing to recover a house. It is another very different thing to recover from the fact that your own blood wanted to leave you on the street. The following 3 months were a whirlwind of subpoenas, hearings, expert testimonies, and declarations. Every week I had to present myself at some government office to answer questions, sign documents, ratify testimonies. Ryan and Vanessa hired an expensive lawyer, one of those who charge $5,000 just for the initial consultation. A man in an Italian suit and a shark smile who tried to intimidate me every time we coincided in the courthouse hallways. "Ma'am, this can be resolved without so much scandal," he would tell me with a honeyed voice. "Think about your son. Do you really want to ruin his life over a misunderstanding?" I looked at him without blinking and responded, "It was not a misunderstanding. It was a planned robbery, and I did not ruin his life. He ruined mine." During that time, I did not speak to Ryan again. He tried to call me twice. He left voice messages that I never listened to completely. Later, I suppose his lawyer advised him not to contact me directly. Vanessa, on the other hand, sent me a message at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday. A single message full of insults, threats, and words I never thought I would read, written with so much poison. I saved it as evidence and handed it to Attorney Ruiz. "Perfect," she responded. "This adds more charges." My embroidery workshop continued to operate, but I was no longer the same. My employees noticed the change. They asked if I was okay. I smiled and nodded, but inside I felt as if I were carrying stones in my chest. The nights were the worst. I would wake up at 3 in the morning, soaked in sweat with nightmares, where Ryan was a child again, and I lost him in a crowd. I dreamed I was searching for him, screaming his name, but he never turned around. One afternoon, my friend Lucy, with whom I had worked for years in the workshop, made me some linden tea and sat in front of me. "Stella, are you really going to go all the way with this? What would you do?" I asked, tired. "I do not know. But I know that boy is your only son, and that when all this is over, win or lose, nothing will ever be the same between you two." "Nothing is the same, Lucy. That died the day he decided to see me as a burden instead of his mother." She sighed and took my hand. "I only ask that you do not lose sight of who you are, because I have seen many times how rage turns us into what we hate." Her words kept spinning in my head for days. Finally, the day of the definitive hearing arrived. The day where the judge would hear all arguments, review all evidence, and dictate the sentence regarding the nullification of the deed. It was a Wednesday in April. The sky was gray, threatening rain. I got up at 6 in the morning, dressed in a navy blue suit, and pulled my hair back into an impeccable bun. I wanted to look dignified. I wanted the judge to see a serious woman, not a desperate victim. Attorney Duran picked me up at 8. "Ready?" he asked, studying my face. "As ready as I can be to watch my son sit on the accused bench." The courthouse was in the city center, an old building with high ceilings and hallways that smelled of old paper and disinfectant. We went up to the 3rd floor where the courtroom was. Ryan and Vanessa were already there sitting with their lawyer. He wore a black suit, gray tie, and looked emaciated. He had lost weight. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. Vanessa, on the other hand, maintained her icy composure with a pearl gray dress and perfectly straight hair. When I entered, Ryan looked up. Our eyes met for a second that felt eternal. I saw pain in his gaze. Regret, maybe. Or perhaps just fear of the consequences. I looked away first. They called us into the room. It was a rectangular space with cream-colored walls, a podium where the judge sat, and wooden benches for the parties. I sat next to my lawyers. Ryan and Vanessa sat on the other side, barely 10 feet away. The judge entered. He was a man of about 60 with white hair and a penetrating gaze. He sat down, arranged his papers, and spoke with a firm voice. "We are here to resolve the lawsuit for nullification of property transfer filed by Mrs. Stella Mendez against her son, Ryan Navarro, and her daughter-in-law, Vanessa Ortega Navarro. We will also address the criminal complaint for financial abuse against the elderly. We will proceed with the presentation of evidence." Attorney Montoya stood up and began to present the case. He spoke for 20 minutes, explaining chronologically how they had deceived me, how they used my fear of losing my assets to manipulate me, how they applied for the mortgage loan without my knowledge. Then came the hardest moment, playing the audio recordings. Vanessa's voice filled the room. "We almost got rid of the problem. We are going to send her to a state home, imagine that. But at least we recovered the investment." I saw Ryan close his eyes, clenching his fists on his legs. Then the audio of his conversation with the real estate agent. "I need to get the current tenant out first." The defense attorney tried to object, arguing that the audios had been obtained without consent, but Attorney Ruiz responded calmly. The audios were recorded by the victim herself during conversations in which she was present. It is completely legal under the law when it comes to documenting a crime. The judge nodded and allowed them to continue. Then it was my turn to testify. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked to the stand. I put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Attorney Montoya asked me basic questions first. My name, my age, my occupation. How had I acquired the property? Mrs. Stella, can you describe in your own words what your son and daughter-in-law told you when they asked you to sign the deed? I took a deep breath. They told me it was to protect me. that if I died, Ryan would have to pay more than $50,000 in taxes. They told me it was just a paperwork formality, that I would continue living in my house as always. They swore it to me. And you believed them? Yes, because he was my son, because I thought he would never hurt me. When did you realize you had been deceived? Tears began to roll down my cheeks, but my voice remained firm. When my lawyer called me to tell me I was no longer the owner of anything, that they had mortgaged my house and planned to kick me out to sell it. How did you feel at that moment? I looked directly at Ryan. He had his head down, avoiding my gaze. I felt like I was dying. I felt that 30 years of hard work, of sacrifice, of unconditional love had meant nothing to him. I felt that my only son had sold me for money. The silence in the room was absolute. Then it was the defense attorney's turn to cross-examine me. He stood up with a stern expression. "Mrs. Stella, is it true that you signed the documents voluntarily in front of a notary? I signed what my son asked me to sign, trusting him. Did you read the documents before signing?" The notary read them quickly. I trusted that my son would not lie to me. "Ma'am, you are a 68-year-old woman, owner of a successful business. Are you telling me you do not have the capacity to read a legal document before signing it?" I felt the rage climb up my throat. I have the capacity. What I did not have was a reason to distrust my own son. Is it not true that you are putting on all this theater because you regretted your decision, that now you want to keep the house you voluntarily gave away? "Objection," shouted Attorney Montoya. "He is badgering the witness." "Proceed," said the judge. "Counselor, rephrase your question." The defense attorney changed tactics. "Mrs. Stella, did your son ever physically threaten you?" "No." "Did he hit you?" "No." "Did he lock you up against your will?" "No, but he manipulated me. He lied to me, and he planned to leave me on the street." According to you, according to interpretations of private conversations you recorded without consent. Attorney Ruiz stood up. "Your Honor, again, we are facing arguments already refuted. The recordings are legal and the words in them are clear and unequivocal." The judge banged his gavel. Sustained. "Counselor, do you have more questions for the witness?" "No, Your Honor." They allowed me to step down from the stand. My legs barely supported me. After that, a forensic psychologist testified who had evaluated my mental state. He confirmed that I was completely lucid and had been a victim of systematic emotional manipulation. Then it was Ryan's turn. I saw him walk toward the stand with slow steps. He looked small, vulnerable. Nothing like the confident man who had entered that notary office months ago, believing he had won. "Mr. Navarro," began his own lawyer, "can you explain what your intention was when asking your mother to sign over the property?" Ryan spoke with a low voice. "I only wanted to protect her. I investigated, and it is true that inheritance taxes are very high. I did not want there to be problems later." "At any moment did you plan to leave her on the street?" "No, never. Those conversations she recorded were taken out of context. I was upset, frustrated, but I never really thought about hurting her." "And the mortgage loan?" Ryan hesitated. "We needed it for an investment project. It was going to generate income for us, and then I was going to return the house to my mom." "Why did you not explain that to her before applying for the credit?" Because I thought she would worry unnecessarily." Now it was Attorney Montoya's turn to cross-examine him. "Mr. Navarro, is it true that you told a real estate agent you needed to evict the current tenant, referring to your mother?" Ryan turned pale. Was that a yes or no?" "Yes, but I did not mean it seriously." "You also did not mean it seriously when your wife said your mother was a burden and you did not correct her. I could not control what Vanessa said." "But you could defend her. Did you?" Silence. "Mr. Navarro, answer the question. Did you defend your mother when your wife called her a burden?" "No," whispered Ryan, and for the first time a tear rolled down his cheek. "I did not defend her." The judge called for a 30-minute recess. I went out of the room and leaned against the hallway wall, trembling. Attorney Duran offered me water. Lucy, who had come to support me, hugged me in silence. When we returned, the judge had his decision ready. After exhaustively reviewing the evidence presented, especially the audio recordings and testimonies, this court determines the following. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hear. First, the transfer of property made by Mrs. Stella Mendez in favor of her son Ryan Navarro is declared null and void due to having been carried out under deceit, manipulation, and substantial error induced maliciously. Second, the property located at 43 Tabasco Street is immediately restored to the name of its legitimate owner, Mrs. Stella Mendez. Third, the mortgage loan obtained fraudulently remains the exclusive responsibility of Mr. Ryan Navarro and Mrs. Vanessa Ortega Navarro, who must liquidate it without the property or Mrs. Stella having any liability whatsoever. Fourth, Mr. Ryan Navarro and Mrs. Vanessa Ortega Navarro are ordered to pay $50,000 for moral damages and legal expenses in favor of Mrs. Stella Mendez. Fifth, the file is turned over to the district attorney's office to determine if criminal proceedings for fraud and elder abuse are appropriate. The gavel fell. Court is adjourned. The world seemed to stop. Ryan had his head in his hands. Vanessa stared straight ahead with eyes full of tears of rage. I stood motionless, processing that I had won. I had recovered my house, my dignity, my life. But looking at my son collapsed in that chair with his shoulders slumped and defeat written in every line of his face, I realized something devastating. I had won the battle, but I had lost my son forever. The days after the sentence were strange, silent, like waking up after a storm and not recognizing the landscape left behind. I went back to my house legally mine again, and walked through every room as if it were the first time. I touched the walls, I sat on my sofa. I went up the stairs, slowly feeling every step under my feet. Everything was the same, but I was no longer the same woman who had left here months ago. Attorney Duran helped me with all the paperwork to register the property in my name again. The bank, after a tense negotiation, accepted that Ryan and Vanessa were the sole parties responsible for the mortgage loan. My house was free of liens. The $50,000 of indemnity arrived in my account 3 weeks later. It was a considerable sum, but it felt empty, as if no amount of money could compensate for what I had really lost. One afternoon in May, while I was embroidering in my workshop, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Mom!" Ryan's voice pierced me like a knife. I did not answer immediately. I just listened to his ragged breathing on the other end. "Mom, I know I have no right to call you. I know that. I know I ruined everything, but I need you to know something." I closed my eyes, pressing the phone against my ear. "Vanessa and I are getting divorced," he continued with a broken voice. She left me when we lost the trial. She said I was useless, that I had ruined the best plan we had, that I was weak for not having been harder on you. I felt a lump in my throat, but I did not speak. And she was right, Mom. I was weak, but not in the way she thought. I was weak because I let her control me, because I allowed her to convince me that you were a burden, because I forgot who you really are. Tears began to roll down my cheeks in silence. "I lost my job," he continued. "The company found out about the trial and they fired me. They say I am a reputational risk. I am living in a tiny apartment I rented with what little I had left, and every day I wake up thinking about how I could betray you like that." "Ryan," I finally spoke with a hoarse voice. "No, let me finish, please. I need to tell you this, even if you never want to hear from me again. Mom, I spent 32 years of my life watching you get up every day before dawn. I saw you sew until your fingers bled. I saw you cry for my dad and still keep going. I saw you build a business from nothing, and instead of honoring that legacy, instead of protecting you like you protected me all my life, I stabbed you in the back." His voice broke completely. "I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I hate myself for what I did to you, and that if I could turn back time, I would give everything I have to never have signed that damn loan, to have defended you when Vanessa insulted you, to have been the son you deserved instead of the monster I became." The silence that followed was dense, loaded with years of love, pain, betrayal, and regret. "Ryan," I said, finally wiping my tears, "I am going to tell you something you need to hear, and after this it is up to you what you decide to do with your life. Tell me. Forgiveness is not something that is given because someone asks for it. It is given when the offended person is ready to let go of the weight of resentment. And I am not ready yet." I heard him sobbing on the other end. "What you did to me was unforgivable. You took away my peace. You took away my trust. You made me doubt my own judgment. And above all, you made me feel that I was worth nothing to you, Mom. But," I continued, "but you are my son. And even though I want to hate you, even though I want to erase you from my life like you tried to erase me from yours, I cannot. Because a mother's love does not turn off that easily, Ryan. It is like those embers that keep burning under the ash, even if everything seems dead." "What do you mean?" "That I am not going to pretend nothing happened, that we are not going to go back to being what we were, because that does not exist anymore. But I am not going to close the door on you forever either. Are you giving me a chance? I am telling you that forgiveness is earned, Ryan. Not with words, not with tears. It is earned with actions, with time, with you showing me that you understood the lesson, that you grew up, that you became a real man, not the puppet of a manipulative woman." How do I show you? You have to discover that on your own, but I am going to give you a piece of advice. Start by rebuilding yourself. Get a job. Pay your debts. Learn to live with the consequences of your decisions. And above all, learn to look at yourself in the mirror without feeling disgust. There was a long pause. "And if I achieve it, if I really change, will there be space for me in your life again?" "Maybe," I answered honestly, "or maybe not. That will depend on many things. But for now, what I need is space, distance, time to heal what you two broke." "I understand," he said with a small voice. "And Mom, even if it is not worth much, I love you. I have always loved you. I simply lost sight of what really mattered. I love you too, Ryan. That is why it hurts so much." I hung up before completely breaking down. The months followed their course. Summer arrived with its suffocating heat. My workshop began to receive more orders. A boutique shop in the Hamptons placed an order for 50 hand-embroidered tablecloths. The work kept me busy, and that was good. I did not have time to sink into the pain. One afternoon in August, Lucy entered the workshop with a serious expression. "Stella, there is a woman outside who wants to talk to you. She says her name is Gabriella and that her story is similar to yours." I went out and found a lady of about 70, her face lined with wrinkles and her eyes full of sadness. "Mrs. Stella, my name is Gabriella Ramirez. I saw your case on the news and I am going through something similar with my daughter and my son-in-law. They are pressuring me to sign over my apartment. They say it is for protection, but after seeing what happened to you, I am afraid." I invited her in. I made her a coffee, and I listened to her story. It was almost identical to mine. The same words, the same promises, the same manipulation disguised as love. "What can I do?" she asked with a trembling voice. "I do not want to lose my home, but I do not want to lose my daughter either." I gave her Attorney Duran's contact information. I explained the steps she should follow, and I told her something she needed to hear. Gabriella, protecting your assets is not a betrayal of your children. It is an act of self-love, and if they really love you, they will understand. She left with a spark of hope in her eyes. That night, I could not sleep. I thought about how many women like Gabriella and like me were out there, how many mothers being manipulated, how many children taking advantage of the blind trust of those who gave them life. The next morning, I called Attorney Duran. Ernest, I want to do something. I want to use part of the indemnity to create something useful. What do you have in mind? An association, small, without many pretensions, but offering free legal advice to elderly people who are victims of financial abuse, teaching them to identify the signs, giving them the tools to defend themselves. There was silence. Then, Stella, that is brilliant. And I know 3 more lawyers who would be willing to donate a few hours a month for something like that. Thus was born Silver Dignity, a small non-profit that we registered in September. With $20,000 from my indemnity, we rented a small space downtown. 2 days a week, we offered free consultations. The first week, 3 people arrived. The second, 8. Within a month, we already had a waiting list. Every story I heard was like looking into a mirror of my own pain, but it was also an opportunity to prevent others from going through the same thing. In addition to legal advice, I started giving free embroidery workshops on Saturdays, not only to teach the trade, but to create a community, a space where older women could feel valued, useful, alive. One of my students, Mrs. Carmela, 73 years old, told me something I will never forget. Mrs. Stella, I come here not only for the embroidery. I come because after my children abandoned me in a nursing home, I thought my life was over. But you taught me that there is still beauty to create. There is still purpose. In November, 6 months after the sentence, I received a certified letter. It was from Ryan. With trembling hands, I opened it. Mom, I do not expect an answer to this letter. I just want you to know that I got a job at a construction company. It is a modest position, way below what I earned before. But it is honest. I am paying off the loan that ruined everything little by little. It is going to take me years to liquidate it, but I am going to do it. I also started psychological therapy. The therapist has helped me understand how I allowed Vanessa to manipulate me, how I confused love with the obsession to appear successful, how I betrayed the values you instilled in me. Every week I deposit $100 in a savings account. I do not know what for exactly. Maybe someday I can pay you back even a tiny part of what you gave me all my life. Or maybe it is just my way of reminding myself that valuable things are built with patience. They are not stolen. I saw on the internet about your association. I read about the embroidery workshops and I was filled with pride. Because despite all the damage I caused you, you remained who you have always been. A woman who turns pain into something beautiful. I am not asking for your forgiveness again. I just want you to know that I am trying to be better. Day by day. Step by step. And if someday when you feel your heart is ready, you would like to have a coffee with me, I will be waiting. With love and eternal shame, your son, Ryan. I folded the letter slowly. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but this time they were not just from pain. There was something else, something that felt similar to hope. I did not answer him immediately, but I kept the letter in my dresser drawer next to the old photographs and Fernando's silver earrings. Because forgiveness, as I had told Ryan, does not arrive in a day. It arrives in small doses, in unexpected moments. In the conscious decision to let go of a gram of resentment every time the weight becomes unbearable. Today, a year after that sentence, I am still living in my house. I am still embroidering. I am still giving workshops. I am still helping people who need to recover their dignity. Ryan and I have had coffee 3 times. Awkward conversations at first where he talks about his work and I talk about my association. Where we avoid mentioning Vanessa or the trial, where we build clumsily something new on the ruins of what we were. I do not know if we will ever have the relationship we had. Probably not, but maybe we can build something different, something more honest, something based on mutual respect and not on blind dependence. because I learned something fundamental in this painful process. True love is not blind. True love allows you to see clearly, and even so, choose to stay. But it also allows you to see clearly when it is time to protect yourself. Respect is not optional, not. It is not negotiated. It is not begged for, and your dignity is not for sale, no matter who the buyer is. I sit on my terrace this afternoon with a cup of coffee between my hands, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink, the same sky I saw when I was broken, the same sky that saw me rise. And I think of all the women who are going through right now what I went through, who feel they are alone, who believe they have no power. And I want to tell them this from the bottom of my soul: you are never too old to defend what is yours. It is never too late to recover your dignity. And true wealth is not in the properties you own, but in the ability to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize the woman you are. A woman who rises, who fights, who survives, and who, despite everything, is still capable of loving. But now, with her eyes wide open. The end. If this story touched something inside you, if you know someone who is living a similar situation, or if you simply want to remember that it is never too late to take back your power, leave me a comment telling me where you are watching us from. Write your country, your city, because stories like this know no borders, and maybe your comment is the push someone else needs to defend themselves. Hit like if you believe that respect for our elders must be unbreakable, and subscribe to continue joining me in these real-life confessions that remind us how strong we can be when we decide not to give up. Because true victory is not in destroying who hurt you. It is in rebuilding yourself and proving that no betrayal can extinguish the light you carry inside. Thanks for staying until the end, until the next story.